Good morning. I'm Dr. Tom Rivera, and I'm a member of the Colton Oral History Project. And to my left is the Dean of the Library, Mr. Cesar Caballeros. And Cesar will do the honors and give us the welcome this morning. Cesar?
Yes, welcome to Dr. Rivera and our guests, and of course, always our fellow audience. You don't see them, but they're very prominently seated in front of us. Welcome. And we're here at the John M. Fowle Library at Cal State San Bernardino. We're headquarters of the Colton Oral History Project and Collection, and where we're about to hold this oral history interview. So welcome again, and we hope to have another rich and rewarding interview that'll become part of the archive for future generations as they would like to learn their history.
Thank you, Cesar. I truly appreciate all your support on the project. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This morning we have Mr. Bobby Vazquez, who was a longtime Colton resident and still lives kind of in Upper South Colton in Grand Terrace. And next to him is Rudy Oliva, and Rudy is a lifelong resident of the city of Colton. And why don't we get started, guys? Again, let me introduce them again. Bobby Vazquez and Rudy Oliva are with us this morning. Why don't we get started? Tell me about La Calle 7, 7th Street. I hear that it's described as the Broadway of South Colton. Why would they call it the Broadway of South Colton?
Probably because that was where most of the businesses were, and the restaurants and bars. So that's probably one of the reasons. The La Calle 7 was actually ran where most of the businesses and bars were, from K Street all the way down to La Cadena.
Okay.
And some of the businesses we had there was, first of all, there was the markets that were there. There was a little market owned by the Morales family. And further down, there was a little, like a craft shop, Edie's. And across the street was the bakery, Panaderia Martinez.
Uh-huh.
And across from that was at one time was Canales Market. And right next door to them was Caldera, the Caldera Hall, where at one time there was a tortilleria on the bottom floor. It was a 2-story building. And right across the street was El Sombrero,
Okay.
a well-known nightclub where they had music, dancing. And then as far as the bars go, you go down halfway down the street, there was El Bolero, and across the street was, what's the name of the bar across the street from
Tampico.
Tampico. And that's about all the businesses that were there. But and at night there was a lot of people, hanging around, walking around, going to these places. And that is one of the reasons they called it. What was it? The Broadway of
The Broadway of South Colton. Yeah.
Broadway. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you also had the church on the same street.
The church, El Salvador, San Salvador.
San Salvador.
And the church had been there for a long time. I couldn't say the years.
Yeah.
But then I think they tore it down and they built a new one.
Yeah.
With the help of the community. Most of the labor was put in by the local parishioners, and it stands still today.
So the church was built early 1900s, early 1900s, moving away from the Agua Mansas vicinity.
Mhm.
And both of you were raised on 7th Street, were they, in that area? Tell us about those experiences in growing up.
Well, there was also a man named Mr. Llamas, and he owned a liquor store right in the corner of Van and 7th. He also had a barber shop next door, and right next door he had a pool hall, you know, where we could go and play pool and all that, you know. And then right in the corner of Van, and then 7th, across the street from the liquor store, there was a gas station
Yeah,
owned by a man called Chayito, who was the father of Perez, Jeremias, ¿cómo se llama?
Jeremias.
Mhm.
Oh,
Johnny Perez.
Well, the first councilman of Colton in
Yeah, Johnny
1941.
Perez.
Right, okay.
But he was a professional fighter, and he fought under the name of Johnny Martinez,
Okay.
a well-known fighter. He fought big time, you know. And I think one time they hired him and sent him to Hollywood to participate as a boxer against John Garfield in the movie The Champion, was it?
Mhm.
The Champion.
He did look like John Garfield, the movie star, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
He did. Yeah. Also, there were some schools there. You know, was Garfield School there and in that area at the
Yeah,
end?
Garfield School was on the far end of 7th Street. There's a bridge there over La Cadena now, and Garfield was there. I went to Garfield Elementary School from kindergarten to 5th grade,
Fifth grade.
and from there we went to Woodrow Wilson, which was right next door, and from there we went to Colton High School.
Okay.
Yeah, in 1938, they built Woodrow Wilson Junior High School. There was an empty lot east of Garfield, and they built Woodrow Wilson Junior High School there. That's when Roosevelt came up with a WPA, you know, to go out and send unemployed people, hiring to build schools and bridges and whatever, and that's where they built Wilson School and Washington High School.
So you were, so the Wilson was built 1938, and when did you go to Wilson as students?
I must have been from 46, about 1944 to about, there was a 3 years at Wilson, till about 47, and from there.
What is your memory of attending school at Garfield and the schools in that city at the time? How diverse were they? Were these schools were they diverse in their student body and their teachers?
Well, it was about 100% Mexican American students, and most of the teachers were Anglo, except there was two that I remember that were Hispanic,
What were their names, Rudy?
Mrs. Gonzalez
Miss Ayala.
and Mrs. Ayala.
Okay. What did they teach?
What do they teach? It's probably social studies that I remember.
And before we'll leave the school for a minute, and tell me, Rudy, you wrote an article in one of those three books that are there. One of the middle book, you have an article that you wrote about the swimming, all the swimming that you did in Colton, because we could not go to North Colton and go to their pools, but we had our own watering holes, or our own swimming holes.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, the thing was that we used to go swimming wherever we could find a place to go. The park in North Colton was off limits to us.
Because
Because
Pancho.
it was all white, no Mexicans allowed. So we used to go wherever we could find a place to go swimming, and there was a lot of places that we found, canals.
Well, tell me about Los Coninos.
Los Coninos.
Yeah.
It was a very popular swimming hole for us, and we thought we were the only ones going there. There was a bunch of us fellas that used to hang around together, but it turns out that later on that everybody was going there from South Colton.
Where were they located? Where's Los Coninos located? They call it La Cuadrita también, El Cuadrito.
It's in the San Ana River
Ah, okay.
on La Cadena, where the bridge in La Cadena is over there. San Ana River,
Yeah.
all that area there.
Yeah, so going south of La Cadena, and then crossing the bridge,
All right.
was it on the right-hand side of the bridge?
There was a canal that used to go underneath La Cadena
Uh-huh.
and continue up the mountain, where the dam is right now.
See,
And the Pardito was around that area.
and you guys had a lot of fun there.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, Rudy, you also talk about La Sequía and La Sección, and there was another watering hole there that you guys went to.
Yeah, La Sección. It actually was, the reason they called it La Sección is because right next to that canal, there was some box cars where the railroad workers used to,
Pacific River, Southern Pacific, yeah.
they used to live there. And they were the workers for the railroad. And there was a canal going there, and we used to go swimming there. And it was known as La Sección. And back to El Cuadrito, it was in an area by the kind of hillside, and that was known as Los Coninos. And El Cuadrito was where the canal went by there, but El Cuadrito, there was the canal went into a kind of a square cement square where they used to have we used to go swimming in there, and it was known as a Cuadrito.
Ah, okay. What about, you also mentioned in your book, there was a canal on Fifth Street that you guys used to swim there too.
Well, that was really one of the very first ones that I remember. And if I remember right, I don't even remember when it was really open. But later on, they kind of they enclosed it. They put a cover on it, cement cover. But that was the early years, and I don't remember ever going swimming in there.
Yeah.
Well, this
But
water,
I'm gonna have to excuse myself, but thank you. Welcome again, and please continue.
Espérate.
Enjoy the interview.
¿Para dónde vas que más valga, César?
Pásala bien. Pásala bien.
Okay. Can you move the chair out of the way, César?
Yes.
Nice
I'll move it
meeting
up.
you.
Same here.
Move it out
Están
of
en
the
su
way.
casa.
Gracias,
Hasta
César.
luego, ¿eh?
Okay,
Permiso.
very good. Anyway, Bobby, you mentioned that canal on Fifth Street would tie in on L Street, would start on L
well,
Street.
this canal originally came from the canal that came through behind the coal ice plant, remember? It came up from
Yeah,
way
yeah,
up there,
yeah.
it came through there, and then he ended up on 10th Street. Somehow or other, it came out on 10th Street. And then from there, he went down M Street. And then from M Street, from 10 or M Street, all the way down to the railroad tracks in front of all the houses, when it was open.
See, okay,
The canal was open.
okay.
And then he went underneath 7th Street. And then it continued going up to the railroad tracks. Somehow or other, it went underneath the railroad tracks.
Uh-huh.
And it came on the other side of the railroad tracks up to 5th Street.
Okay,
From 5th Street, it disappeared. It went underneath someplace. And it came out again on 5th Street. Remember?
Yeah, okay.
Came
Yeah,
out
I
again
did.
on 5th
I
Street,
did.
south of Nth Street. It came out again up there.
okay, so that's, I've been,
And then it continued going all the way down to Aguamanza Cemetery. It went away all the way up there.
Okay. Because I wondered about that covered area before when I go through Fifth Street. Tell me about Chap Hill. You guys swim in Chap Hill también.
Yeah. You can still see part of the river, of the canal there. If you're going up Grand Terrace up the hill,
See,
if you look to the left, you can see the canal there.
and you used to swim there.
We used to walk up there and swim too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you describe your trip from your house on 7th Street through Colton, passing the park, and then going through, crossing the Santa Ana River. And Bobby talked about taking off his clothes and crossing the Santa Ana River, and then crossing the alfalfa fields, and then going up to swim at the Chap Hill Canal. Yeah.
We used to swim naked sometimes in Santa Ana River. Take our clothes on and swim naked.
Yeah. Back to, what about, when you guys were young, your books talk about your entertainment, the radio. What were some of the stations or stories or programs that you would tune in on the radio?
Well, I remember one of them that was very popular was The Shadow.
The Shadow Knows.
The Shadow Knows. Oh, we used to listen to that. I don't remember if it was nightly or once a week. But, anytime that it was on, we were there listening. So, but this one of the
Lone
ones.
Ranger.
The Lone Ranger?
Yeah.
Yeah. ¿Y cuál otra? Can you remember some of the others?
Not quite. I can't remember any of them.
Frank, do you remember any of those? Tampoco? Henry?
Just the ones you've mentioned already.
Yeah. What about, Bobby, in your book, you wrote about all the bands that we had in South Fulton, all the music that you guys were exposed to, the swing years. You
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about the swing years. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the sound came from the radios, Remember when we used to put the radios and then we started listening to music of the bands, the big bands, which then, by Benny Goodman changed it to the name band. And there were all kinds of different bands, and they played in the radio.
What was your favorite? What was your favorite?
My favorite band was at that time was Harry James.
And the song that you remember, Harry James? And the song that you remember?
Oh, Harry James played a lot of good songs.
Uh-huh.
And Cherry Cherry Bean was one of his favorites. And then he had a couple of vocalists, Helen Forrest and Frank Sinatra and Dick Haynes, and they sang pretty songs with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Helen Forrest sang I Cry For You, and Frank Sinatra sang All or Nothing at All. They became real popular with our James Band.
And you also talk about, what was that dance on going towards it's the Inland Center now? The
Valley Ballroom.
The Valley Ballroom. You talk about the Valley Ballroom, and you talk about the auditorium in downtown San Bernardino. Tell me about
Where the big bands used to come down.
Yeah.
Yeah. The municipal auditorium was a huge building with a big dance floor, and I had a balcony on top where people that didn't want to dance, they could just sit and listen. And the bands would be on top of about 4 feet above the floor. And then there was a big curtain that opened before they started playing. Just about all the bands came down and played there.
Uh-huh.
Tommy Dorsey, Harry James, and
Lionel Hampton, was he ever around?
no, he never did come down. He never was on.
And well, tell me about the Kingsmen. The Kingsmen, who were the
You're telling me.
Kingsmen?
It was just, there was about 4 or 5, 6 of us guys that used to hang around together, and
Well,
I think-
the 4 or 5 guys were the guys that put the books together, ¿verdad? And who are they? Tell me who they are.
Okay, there was, at that time, one of the guys, Gil Alvarez, I think it was his idea. We used to hang around together, went to high school together. And I think it was him that came up with the idea of forming like a club. And the name Kingsman came up, so we liked that. So, and then we had some jackets made with the name the Kingsman, and I don't recall, but did they let us wear them to high school, or did they?
Yeah, the jackets had a crown in the back, big crown in the back, and our name in front with a little crown, and they were maroon with gray stripes, in the arms. And we went to Redlands, Pratt Sporting Goods. In Redlands, where my freshman coach, basketball coach, Don Leonard, used to work. Oh, he was part owner, and they had the jacket made there. And,
Yeah. And then Rudy asked if you could wear them at the high school.
I don't recall if they let us wear them at the high school or not. But anyway, and other things that we did, Gilbert got the idea of getting some white caps and attending football games. And we used to sit in a section of the stadium, and we used to cheer and everything. So, and then at that time, Tony Morataya had an old car. I think it was like a three-seater convertible, really an old car. And we used to ride that, go to school, and that was what we used to do as being together as a Kingsmen.
Uh-huh.
we started, the reason we did this because there was a club of white guys that also wore jackets that were called what?
I don't-
Remember they used to use jackets.
I don't recall.
What's them, Alan?
Was it the Cobras, maybe?
No.
I don't remember.
Well, they wore jackets and all that, this club of white guys. But McIntosh wouldn't say anything. They wear them to school and all that. And then when we started wearing our jackets from school, he put a stop to it. He didn't want us to wear the jackets to school.
What did he tell you?
He just told us that you're not supposed to be wearing all kinds of club jackets to school. The only way we could wear them is to take the crown off. That's the only way we could. It's not always strict, but and just wear the jacket.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So you didn't wear them to school then?
Well, after that, no. Well, we just wear the jacket
Yeah.
without a crown and designs.
Yeah. So Rudy, it was just guys getting together from La Calle Siete.
Yeah, most of us guys live close to each other, and we just used to hang around, and I guess we had some things in common, and like sports and music. So we had some good times.
Yeah. And the guys, you mentioned one or two, and you had other fellows that were from La Calle Siete that were your pals. Joe Lucero.
Yeah, he was one of the.
Yeah.
I don't think he was a Kingsman, but he was one of our good friends.
And then Rudy Serrano, Dr. Rudy Serrano,
Yes.
that was at San Jose State as a dean.
Uh-huh.
And who else? Frank Sanchez was
Sanchez.
also part of your group.
Uh-huh. And
Juan Cabrera.
yeah, Johnny Cabrera. He got killed in the World War.
Korean War.
In the
He
Korean
was
War.
the first casualty in the Korean War from South Korea.
What about the first casualty from World War II? Fidel Hernandez?
Oh,
Fidel Hernandez?
yeah, Fidel Hernandez.
Didn't they have some type of chapter for him?
Well, what happened? when they came home, the soldiers from Colton, they decided to form an American Legion post. And all these fellows were veterans, so they decided to form an American Legion post. And they, of course, they picked his name. What was it?
Fidel Hernandez?
It was
Hernandez.
Fidel Hernandez Post. I think it was 754.
Uh-huh.
And they formed a post, and they used their. They
He
used
was,
to,
he was a casualty, he was killed in World War II.
Huh? He was a
He
first
was a casualty
casualty.
in World War II.
And their meeting place was at this Caldera Hall
On 7th Street.
on 7th Street, across the street from the El Sombrero.
Mm-hmm.
They used to meet up on the second floor. And they did a few good things, getting organized like that. In fact, one of the returning veterans, Ralph Cervantes, was injured seriously in the war. And then when he came home, he got married and he was trying to purchase a house in the north side of Colton. And they wouldn't sell him a house because of discrimination. So he contacted the Fidel Hernandez Post, and they went and fought for him, and they got him to get permission to buy a house there in North Colton.
That was in, what year, 53 or so?
Well, it was after the war.
Okay.
45 was the end of the war, right? Right after the war was over.
At that
Also-
time, they wouldn't let no Mexicans live in North Colton buy houses and all that.
Yeah, it was a separate community from, in the railroads, the Southern Pacific Railroad
Yeah.
was a dividing line.
There was.
So anything of North Colton, you couldn't cross over. And I understand there was a curfew of 9 o'clock.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
No. Was there a curfew? A
No.
curfew? I
No.
don't know. I don't
And
think
then
so.
everything, all the Mexican Americans lived in South Colton, really. Okay.
Yeah,
And
right.
Rudy, I also understand that your brother had the same problem as Ralph Cervantes. That he could not purchase a house in North Colton.
Right, and consequently, not being able to find a home in Colton, where he wanted to live, but there was nothing available. They bought a house in Loma Linda,
Mm.
Oh, Angel.
Angel,
Yeah, Angel.
and one of my other brothers also. I don't know if it was because he couldn't find a home, but he also bought a home in Fontana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it was because he couldn't find a home or because it was closer to work, Kaiser.
At
where he
Kaiser.
worked.
Yeah, but definitely Angel just couldn't buy a house in North Colton.
That was his main reason why he went to Loma Linda.
And
Well, one of the protesters that was protesting against Ralph Cervantes to buy a house in North Colton where we wanted to was McIntosh, Donald McIntosh, the principal of Colton High School, because he lived right there. He lived in the same street, and he was one of the protesters, you know.
So it was tough when you guys were growing up in South Colton. Yeah, and I understand your brother Angie, that bought a house in Loma Linda, was a World War II veteran, and he was very active in setting up the American Legion post of Fidel Hernandez.
Yeah, he was.
And he was very active in social issues, social justice issues in Colton.
Also, my other brother, Pascual,
Oh, that's right.
they used to work together. I mean, you know, with the Post and the other, I don't know if they're political or civic organizations, like the Trabajadores Unidos. And
Okay.
they used to belong to those organizations.
Progresistas?
Yeah.
Okay.
So both of them were pretty active.
What about Congress of Community Clubs? I understand that they were also part of that. group.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You also want to mention that Rudy's brother, Pascual Oliva, was the first mayor of Colton He was elected mayor of Colton for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
What year was that, Rudy? Do you remember? Was it the early 60s?
I'm not very good at remembering
About the
dates.
60s,
What time, about what year?
around the 60s.
Yeah, he was elected mayor, and he was the first Mexican-American mayor in Colton.
Ah, in the 60s.
Uh-huh.
Well, you know, when Johnny Martinez was a councilman in 41, that was 54 years because Colton was chartered in 1887.
Mhm.
And then 54 years later, Johnny Jeremias Martinez was elected councilman. And then after Johnny was Pete Lukey.
Yeah,
Pete Lukey, that
Pete
was
Lukey.
also a councilman.
Mhm.
And then your brother was a councilman,
and,
Pascual, and then he became mayor.
right.
And then after that, we have Abe Beltran that became mayor.
Mhm.
And then we had, ¿cómo se llama?
Frank,
Frank Gonzalez.
Frank Gonzalez.
Frank Gonzalez that became mayor.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Angie was quite a person, ¿verdad?
Yes, he was. He was very involved. He was very involved.
And how old is Angie now, Rudy?
He's 96 now.
And still lives in 96, still
Yeah.
lives in Loma Linda?
Still lives in Loma Linda. It's the same house they bought when they moved from Colton.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
His other brother, Frank, he lives right there in,
He lives in Frank lives in right there in Colton, and I forget what the name, off of Rancho Avenue, Rancho and
off
C Street.
Oh, so he still lives there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's about, how old is he?
I think he's about 91, 92.
Yeah. He don't go out too much now. I used to be saved around, but he doesn't go out much. Huh?
No, they kind of had their good times, but you know, it's age kind of tells you to slow down a little
Yeah,
bit.
La Bola, ¿verdad?
La Bola.
It catches up with all of us.
Yeah.
Bobby, you talked about being very involved in athletics in Colton High School. You were an athlete in
Oh.
sports. You were a sports guy. You lettered in almost all sports when you were a freshman.
You know, when I was going to Woodrow Wilson Junior High School, there was a man that came from Big Bear Lake. He used to be principal up there in one of the schools. Mr. Grace was his name. He came down and became, my 8th grade, he became principal at Woodrow Wilson Junior High School. And the man was very active in sports, you know. He started getting us involved in playing softball and baseball and basketball and everything. So the first thing, we made a football team where we played tag, you know. And he took us up to Big Bear to play school like he used to be up there, and we played up there, and we beat him. And then later on, he took us around other schools, and then one time he took us up to Alexandra High School in San Bernardino to play with us, that football game. We went up there and we played, we tied, you know, we were tied up after the game. Then later on, they came to Colton to play us, and we were the guys from Mount Vernon or Alexandra School. And they beat us down here at Colton. And then he also had a he made a basketball team. And he took us all over playing basketball to other schools and all that. And,
At Colton High School, you lettered in what sports?
well, when I entered high school, I earned letters in football, basketball, baseball, and track. I got 4 letters in my freshman year.
And did you graduate from high school?
No, I left Colton High School in 1951
Why?
for the same reason, discrimination from Mr. McIntosh. He always put a lot of pressure on me, you know. And I said, I'm gonna get out of here. So I left and I joined the army.
Yeah, but you were also thinking of going to USC to play ball. What happened with that?
Oh, this teacher, Miss Patricia Weiss, she used to tell me a lot, Mommy, you know, like she had a master's degree from the University of Southern California.
Who was this? What was the name of the teacher?
She was Dean of Girls in Colon High School,
Okay, ¿cómo se llamaba?
Patricia Weiss,
Okay,
or Weiss or whatever. And she used to tell me, Bobby, you know, I think you got very potentials, you know, in football. If you stick around and all that, I'm pretty sure that, I know people in USC, I'm pretty sure that I probably can get you a scholarship to go over there. And she probably could have, because remember Wayne Curley?
Yeah,
She got him over there. He played at USC,
he did, huh?
but he got hurt, and his first year broke his leg, and that was it. He couldn't play anymore.
yeah. So, ¿qué pasó? What happened that you decided not to go to USC?
Who?
You?
I didn't decide, I quit school.
Oh,
But the teacher, this being a girl, used to tell me that if I continue playing, you know, that she could get me a scholarship to go.
okay. So you left school what year? Your
51.
Your junior year?
51, my junior year.
And what did you do? ¿Qué hiciste?
Oh, I
You
joined the
joined
army.
the army?
Mhm.
Yeah. And then you were in the army and you went from one base.
I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina with the 82nd Airborne. And from then they sent me to Fort Benning in Georgia for airborne training school.
And then?
Back to Fort Bragg.
And then?
From then, I got tired of being there in Fort Bragg with the 82nd. All they did was train, and I got sick of it.
So you volunteered to go to
So
Korea?
I went to the company commander requesting to be sent to Korea. That's the only way to get out.
Yeah.
So I got my request and I left Fort Bragg.
So you told him, I want out of this.
Yeah,
I want to go to Korea.
I got tired of training.
Y te mandaron a Korea. They sent you to Korea.
Hmm.
And in Korea, se acabó la guerra. You got there.
I was there when it ended.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was there 13 months in Korea, and I was there when the war ended.
Uh-huh. And then when you came home, you started working where, Bobby?
I worked for the Pacific Rail Express
Uh-huh.
Railroad there in Colton. And when that shut down, I went to work with Santa Fe.
What year did the PFE shut down?
In 59 they shut the place down,
Okay.
the PFE.
Okay.
And then after that, in 58, I got laid off from there, and then I went over to Santa Fe and got a job there. And I retired from the Santa Fe.
And tell us about, you got your high school diploma.
Hmm?
When did you get your high school diploma?
Well, after I retired from the Santa Fe in 1995, I read an article in the paper that was Washington Alternative High School, you know, for people that wanted to go back to school.
So Washington was in Colton, the school in
Yeah,
Colton?
Washington High School there in Colton.
Okay.
So I went out there and asked, you know, find out if I could enroll in the school, you know, to get my high school diploma. So they sent me to a class, come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and we'll give you a test to see how much you know. Apparently I didn't do too good, because she told me that, you know what, you're gonna have to start again from the bottom. So I started again from the 9th grade, like it is in Colon High School. And I went there, but I went there 2 years. I went to summer school and all that, took all the computer classes that they required. And I graduated from Washington High School in 2 years.
Very good. What
In
year
2
was that,
years.
Bobby? What year was that?
Let's see, I think it was 97 and 98.
Okay, okay.
And I got my high school diploma.
Congratulations. There was, after all those years that you were,
Yeah.
almost 20 years or so that you were gone and not left high school? There were 20 years.
It's a good school. Washington was a good school. It is.
Well, they got you a high school diploma, yeah. And Rudy, you were also in the military.
Yeah, I was, actually what happened is I was drafted in, I think it was the year, in 1954. And I had just recently, I was 23, I had recently gotten married.
And that didn't defer you?
No, they, somehow or another, they must have made some kind of a mistake, because I was classified, before that, I was classified, I think it was 4F, which meant there was something wrong with me physically, even though there wasn't. So, a lot of my friends got drafted, and they never called me. Till later on, when I was 23 years old and recently married, I got a notice that I was drafted. So I went in, and it was in '54, and luckily the Korean War had just ended, and I went to Fort Ord for basic training, and then I was sent to Colorado for mechanic school, and from there I was sent to Korea. I spent a year in Korea, but after experiencing the weather down there, I was thankful that I hadn't been there during the war, because it was mighty cold.
Yeah,
So-
I remember when I got discharged in '54. I came home and I asked, "Hey, where's Rudy and Dick Kalung?" And they're in the army. They were drafted.
So you beat them by leaving high school.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, Rudy, mom and dad, when did they come to Colton? Early 1900s or something?
The early 1900s, they came from Leon, Guanajuato, Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And with them, when they came, they had two of my older brothers with them, which there's a picture where they must have been, maybe 3 years old, 2 years old. And so they were born in Mexico. And
Now, which two brothers, was this Angie?
there was Agustin and Angie,
Okay.
Angel.
Okay.
Agustin was the eldest one, and then Angie, and they were the first three of eight boys, and the rest of us were born here in the United States.
Okay, and Angie born in Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. But Angie was in the service, so he became a citizen. And I guess Augustine, the eldest, I think he went to school and became a citizen.
Mhm. So they came here in the early 1900s, and they came from Mexico,
Mhm.
and they stayed in Colton then.
Yes, uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
And Bobby, you didn't come directly from Mexico to Colton. Your parents went to, was it Kansas?
Actually, when they were in Mexico, that was around the time, the 1910 was the last revolution
Right.
in Mexico. They were trying to get their freedom from Porfirio Diaz, the president of Mexico. So my father was he was in the army with the Federalistas, a soldier. So when he met my mother, my father was from Guanajuato and my mother was from this other place, I can't remember the other place. My mother was an Indian, the Yaqui Indian. And when they met, they got married. And my mother finally convinced my father that he was on the wrong side. So my father deserted the army, and they joined Pancho Villa. So they fought with Pancho Villa, my mother and my father. And while the men were fighting, my mother and the rest of the ladies were carrying, bedding, pots and pans, and Well, there were no doctors or nurses, they were nursed, or injured, you know.
So she was kind of the original Adelita. The original Adelita that helped the soldiers.
Yeah, so they call them soldaderas.
Yeah.
Soldaderas, you know. And some of them used to hold rank. Some of the soldaderas, you know, like captains and colonels and all that.
Mhm.
And they would fight along with Pancho Villa.
And then they went from Mexico, where did they go?
Well, at that time, my mother got pregnant, so one of his friends told him, being that he deserted from the army, he better get out of Mexico and go into the United States. So they crossed El Paso around 1915. They crossed El Paso. And at that time, there were a lot of people who were just waiting for Mexican people to come across the United States, you know. So there was a truck that hired them, my mother and my father, and they took them up to Salt Lake City, where my father went to work for the railroad. And then they stayed up there for almost 5 years. And my mother was pregnant and she lost the first child, you know. And then later on she had her second child, which is Mary Flores, my older sister, there in Salt Lake City. From then, my father heard there was a lot of work in the railroad in Southern California. So from then they came into Colton, on Salt Lake City, and they landed there in Colton in 1929.
Okay, okay.
Well, there they rented a hotel on the second floor of the building right there on which 8th Street, La Cadena, you know, but
Sí.
they call that 8th Street then. And Jay, it was a building where the store, Helmut's department store, used to be. And they had rooms up there for rent. So they came in and rented a room up on top of the second floor. And next morning, my dad came down from the room because he was going to go buy something to eat. And while he was walking down the street, there was a man calling him, Gonzalo, Gonzalo. So my father turned around and he saw that it was Isa Lopez, my mother's brother. So he asked my father, hey, where's my sister Marina? And you know, she's up there in the hotel room. So he took her up there room. And they met up there. My mother started crying, meeting her brother, you know. Isa and his family had came directly to Colton. So Isa told my mom that he had a surprise for her. And he took him down to South Colton between in M Street, between 7th and between 8th, La Cadena and 7th Street. And right in the middle, that's where Isa Lopez used to live. And most of his family lived there too. And that, my mother's parents also lived there. So he took her took my mother to see her parents, and they were.
So it's a wonderful reunion.
Yeah.
It's a great reunion. And that's when you
And my father and Isa Lopez,
Uh-huh.
they used to work for the cement plant.
Okay.
And my grandfather, Chencho Crescento, Chencho,
Yeah.
he worked for the cement plant too, but the only job he did was to feed the mules and water them and get them ready for work next day. Because the mule was the only transportation they had, you know, to bring the cement down from the hill.
Uh-huh.
So after a while, he retired.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have, Bobby?
I had 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
Uh-huh. And I remember your little brother Raul.
Yeah.
He played football with me at Colton High School. Good football player. So it runs in the family, brother.
No, he didn't play. What I heard was that he got in trouble one time at school, and they told him that if he played football, they would not do anything. So he went out for football, but he didn't last too long.
We played the freshman year, his
Oh, did you?
freshman year. I played with him his freshman year. Yeah, he's a very good ball player. Yeah. Let me kind of change the subject a little bit. In the middle book there, Bobby, the middle book that's there, you wrote an article on the Colton Mercuries.
Mhm.
Tell me about the Colton Mercuries.
Well, the Colton Mercury is something that way back in about 1938 or 39, there was a group of men that there in South Colton that wanted to make a softball team. So they picked a few ones, you know, and the person that was Robert Rosales, I don't know if you know him.
My neighbor, my
Robert
grandfather.
Rosales.
See,
He was up there where you used to live.
O Street, yeah.
You know, on North Street. Him and a guy, Ralph Martinez, and, well, a group of those guys, they built a softball team there. And they play right there in that park, you know, on the corner of 7th and La Cadena.
Uh-huh.
There was an empty lot there. And they play there on weekends, you know, and regular clothes, you know. And they play anybody that wanted to play with them, you know. And then from then on, well, they continued playing. And then in South Colton, there was a Beverage Park. And they had a Mexican guy working up there by the name of Gabe Castorena. And everybody was wondering what Gabe Castorena was working for the city of Colton. Because they wouldn't hire Mexicans in the city of Colton then. So apparently, being that the park was in South Colton, no white guy wanted to work over there.
Mm.
So they gave that job to Gabe Castorena. And being that he had a ballpark there with lights, you know. And he contacted the boys there that they wanted to use the ballpark, you know, to practice and play, you know, with lights and everything. So from then on, they went up there and that's where they started, you know, Colton Mercury's.
And I hear they were pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a lot of the first guys that started was Robert Rosales, Gus Leon,
Teo
Gus
Duarte,
Leon,
Teo Duarte,
Freddie Vazquez, who else?
Teo Duarte,
Teo Duarte, Tony Garcia,
Charlie Martinez.
Ralph Martinez, the catcher, Charlie and Pet Carranza were the pitchers. They were from High Grove. And, Willie Herrera. And they started, they eventually, you know, they started playing, Gabe Castorena wanted to buy uniforms for them. So he went out to the stores, the business bit in South Colton to see if they would donate money to buy the uniforms. And which they did, they agreed to it, they bought uniforms, green, red, white, and green. But you found later that Carmelita, okay, it was Martinez Market that put the money up
Yeah.
to buy the uniforms.
Yeah, they were one
Because
of the,
Baker Martinez used to be in the team.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. And he was with the bakery store.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
it was the owner of Martinez Market
Uh-huh.
was the one that put up the money to buy the uniforms.
Mhm.
And then from then on, they started playing games, you know, they in San Bernardino, they had a league called, they used to have games up there, the city of San Bernardino used to have games, people playing up the teams and all that. And they would play the Mercuries and then they started going out of town playing, you know. They even went to Mexico, to Tijuana and Calexico and all those towns up there to play over there. And they always came back victorious, you know.
Yeah, I hear that they were pretty good. And then they decided in the late 40s, they decided to become pro. But each city could only have one semi-pro team.
Mhm.
And they had the Hubbards. The Hubbards were the Anglo team from North Colton. So the Mercuries challenged them for a game 2 out of 3, and whoever won would represent Colton.
Yeah, they had this professional league, softball professional league. There was other teams around, you know. So the Mercuries wanted to join the league, you know. But being that Colton already had a team playing there, which were the Colton Harbors,
Right,
nothing but white guys.
right.
You know, they wouldn't allow two teams from one city to be there to join. So before the season started next, the Mercury started challenging the Harbors, you know, to play a couple of games. See if they win, they would join the league, you know. So the Colton Mercury beat the Harbors. And the point is that the Harbors were all white guys that went to high school with the Mercury's and all that. Carl Swing, Dave Swing brother, Hal Pierce,
Priest.
Ed Tamby, Marty, who else the other white guys? Well, in other words, they beat them and then the Mercury joined the league. But there was another team from Bloomington, the Cedar Lumber, that also joined the league, you know. And they played, we used to go to Paris Hill Park to see them. San Bernardino, they had a guy named Neil McDermott. They used to own a bar in San Bernardino, the Prop Room.
Proper.
And he had a team that played in the league. And most of the Colton players like Carl Swing and Pierce and those guys, Tamby, they went to play in San Bernardino.
Mm-hmm.
They played for the Prop Room.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of them went to City Lumber.
Yeah. I understand that the Mercuries played one of the major leagues that were training in Paris Hill. Do you remember that team?
Oh, they just didn't, after the football faded away, they also played baseball. And some of the players that play softball, they also play baseball. They had a bunch of good players. Colton had a bunch of good players. And Ralph Martinez and his brother,
Ray?
Ray, they were pretty. Ray Martinez actually played 2 years to the Oakland Oaks of the Pacific Coast Conference then. A very strong triple E.
How about Art Miguel?
Who?
Art Miguel from Corona? First
Oh, Art
baseman.
Miguel, he came from Corona and he joined the baseball team. And he played professional ball, the St. Louis Browns of the old American League.
What about the Abril brothers?
Oh, Manuel and Ernie Abreu. I played ball with them, you know. We used to play American Legion ball in high school. But there were two twins that were raised together. And they were very close, always together. And Ernie Abreu, on his senior year in Colton High School, he batted 700 and some in his senior year.
700?
And that's when the Pittsburgh Pirates drafted him. They not only drafted him, but they also drafted his brother. They drafted both of them. So they went to play with the Pittsburgh Pirates, traveling, you know. But then the Korean War interrupted and they went to Korea, you know, both of them. After the Korean War ended, they came back and they started going back to Pittsburgh with the Pittsburgh Pirates, traveling all over, you know, AAA and all that, Texas League and all that. And the last team that they were in Lincoln, Nebraska. In Lincoln, Nebraska, there was a guy named, I can't remember the name of that guy. That guy had hit 87 home runs in Lincoln, Nebraska, AAA for the Pirates. So the Pirates right away was going to bring him up next year. But they also wanted Ernie. They wanted Ernie to go up to play in a big time league. And Ernie told him, well, what about my brother? Well, right now there's not room for your brother, we just want you. And he said, well, if my brother don't go, I'm not going to go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Lot
so
of loyalty
they
there.
came home.
A lot of loyalty there.
Yeah.
Of loyalty there.
So they came home. But they were so close together that they didn't want to be separated. So Ernie said, no, we're going to go home.
Yeah.
So they came down. And then they came down and started playing with the Colton Mercury.
Right. Let me get back to the politicians in Colton. We talked about Jeremias, 1941. We talked about Pete Lukey in the 50s, and then we talked about Pascual in the 60s, and Abe in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then Frank Gonzalez. Tell me about Manuel Padilla, because when I read some of the things, one of the dedication pages that you have in your book, you say that Manuel Padilla was one of the guys that helped Colton tremendously in social issues that involved our people.
Yes, he was very involved with political organizations and the civic organizations in South Colton. In fact, we were talking about Angel being active. He was a very close friend to Manuel Padilla,
Okay.
and they used to work together. So he did a lot of good for the Colton community in South Colton, and parades,
Los de Fiestas Patrias.
las fiestas patrias, and well, he was involved with the Congress of Community Clubs, and so he did a lot for the city of South
And where did he
Colton.
live?
He lived on N Street. N Street.
Before they built the underpass there.
Oh, the under the railroad. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's where they lived. They lived. The Rubios lived right there next to him, and Rudy Serrano lived across the street.
Okay.
And Abe Beltran lived down the street on the corner.
Uh-huh.
So they were all neighbors.
Yeah. Manuel was very involved in the Congress of Community Clubs
He was.
and social issues. Tell me about his sisters.
Tula.
Tula Padilla.
And I forget the name of the other sister.
Yeah, Tula was also very involved.
But she was very involved with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and also with the fiestas.
Okay.
I think she was in charge of some of the speakers and the kids that were performing. She was very involved too. Yeah.
And quite supportive of the Catholic Church.
She was. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. One other question, a couple of more. I'm almost done here. Did you have any heroes while you were growing up in Colton? Think about that for a minute. And if you guys can chime in with any questions, we'd appreciate any of your questions. Did you have any heroes?
I myself, most of my heroes were in the sports world. I was really into sports, and some of my heroes, like especially Pancho Gonzalez,
Okay, the tennis player.
the tennis player, and most of all the other teams, the Boston Red Sox, but also, I don't know if I've ever considered him my hero, but I respected him a lot, and I admired him, was my oldest brother, Augustine, because my father died in 1936. I was 5 years old, and when my dad passed away, he left a family of 8 sons and a daughter, and Augustine was the one that took over the family, and he was the one that really raised us all, and I think he did a pretty good job.
Oh,
And so I would consider him one of my
You're a
heroes.
hero.
He worked at Kaiser.
uh-huh.
Kaiser. He used to work nights
Mhm.
because every time we went over to Rudy's house,
Yeah.
always asleep.
Yeah, he was a very hard worker.
Yeah.
In fact, he built a house right next to where we lived, and when he got married, that's where he lived.
Okay.
So he was quite a man.
He was.
Quite a man.
There's a man, you never heard him cuss or anything. Very quiet.
Didn't smoke or drink.
No.
He was a very respectable gentleman.
So he was a good role model for you then?
Yeah, he set a good example, even though we didn't follow it to the letter.
Well, you were a friend of Bobby's. So.
But I also, when during the war, when Pascual, he was in the Air Force, he was a radio operator on the B-17. He also was in what they call the ferry command. The ferry command. And when he used to come home, he'd bring all his gear, his fur jackets and everything, and big old boots, for they wore when they flew. And we used to put them on. I was just a little kid, but I also respected all my other brothers. They were all good people.
Bobby, who was your hero in your time?
My favorite sport hero is Ted Williams from the Boston Red Sox. Ted Williams was born in San Diego, and he went to Hoover High School in San Diego. And his mom used to work for the Salvation Army, and his father died, when he was young. And he had a brother who turned out to be an alcoholic. So Ted Williams played for Hoover High School, which he became very good, a very good player. And when he graduated from Hoover, the Boston Red Sox picked him up and sent him here to the Pacific Coast League. He played with Spokane Ports, another team from the Pacific Coast League. And when he got there, a lot of players, they used to make fun of him because he was real skinny, tall and skinny, But he was a very good ball player. He stayed there with the Sox, with the Ports for about, I think only a year when the Red Sox brought him up in 39. They took him up to Fenway Park. Well, he played that year, and then in 1940, the war broke up, in Germany. So he was still there. Then in 1949, before he was drafted, he was hitting. He already was hitting 400.
And he was your hero while you were growing up.
He was hitting 400, and then the last two games were going to be a doubleheader. So the owner of the Red Sox called him to his office and told him, "Dad, you already are betting 400. If you don't want to play the last games, a doubleheader, you don't have to. You already got your 400." And he said, "No, I want to play." So he went to play in a doubleheader. He got 4 hits out of 7. So he ended up with 646. And so far, that record hasn't been broken yet.
Yeah, so he was one of your heroes because you were also a very good ball player. But let me shift from there, and I should have asked this question before. Caldera, Juan Caldera, he, on South 5th Street, he built a plunge, he built a baseball field, he built a bull ring, and he also built a dance hall. Tell me about Juan Caldera. You have a nice story about that.
Well, like I told you before about how he got started, ¿verdad?
A ver.
Oh, on 5th Street, before you get to Falk Street, he had a house there. And there was an empty lot right there across the street where he lived. And this man that was working for him was digging a hole up there someplace, and he found some coins. I don't know if they were silver or gold coins.
Yeah. This is the story that you've heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after that, he showed the coin to Juan Caldera. And what I heard was that Juan Caldera told the guy, "Well, you better go home, it's getting late." So Caldera started digging, and he found a box of coins, whether it was silver or gold, I don't know. But he found that box of money. And I guess that's where he started building all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Where he built his baseball field, his
The
plunge.
plunge, he built the plunge.
the bull ring,
And then he had a boxing club there,
Mhm.
a
boxing
club.
arena.
Okay.
where they used to have fights. And then the bull ring, and then the dance hall, what do they call it?
I don't-
Cup something like that.
Well, was the name of that swimming pool Cubs Plunge?
Yeah,
Cubs?
Cup plunge, yeah.
So there must have been the
Hall or something.
Cubs Hall, maybe, yeah.
Cup dance floor, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then the corner of Rancho, and now on Mansa Road, right there, he had that baseball field that he built, where they had ball games there too. And then he had a grocery store right in the corner of 7th and N, also that he opened. And then Caldera, did he help his brother build this building?
I don't recall it. As far as I can remember, the building was there.
Yeah.
When I was, when I became aware.
He had a brother, Cristobal.
Oh, yeah,
The Cristobal
Cristobal.
brother that had that
Cristobal.
store there across from the Sombrero
Okay,
Market,
okay.
a two-story building. In the bottom floor, he had a store where they made tortillas and all that stuff, you know.
Okay. So anyway, that's a story about where Cabrera got his resources to build all those different.
That money that he found.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's the story that's been, and now, what was heard was that Joaquin Murrieta, the bandit from Mexico, at that time traveled through there, and that he had hit some money there, around that area,
Yeah.
and he never came back to collect it, you know.
Because
Maybe
it-
that's the money that
Yeah.
Caldera found.
Could be. The story that I heard was that used to be a stagecoach depot there in that area. The stagecoach would go to Los Angeles and back, and then back to Tucson, El Paso, and that perhaps somebody from the stagecoach just buried the box there. Pero quién sabe? We have to dig some more and find out. Yeah. Now, we've been at this for 1 hour now, a little over an hour. I have one last question, and I'll ask the folks out here if they have any questions they could ask us now or about you. But my question is there anything else, down at the bottom, is there anything else that you would like to share with us regarding you growing up in South Colton?
Well, I was looking over the list here, and one thing I would like to mention is when you're talking about entertainment, the fellows there, my brothers included, Pascual, Agustin, Frank, and Angel. They were in a band. They formed a band with the Martinez boys from the bakery across the street, Nick and Baker, and they had a group, a little band, and they went by the name of the Latin Lads. And they used to play all over, and in fact they used to play, because at the time when they first started, they were still going to school, high school, and they used to play for the high school at the dances. So that was one of the things I wanted to mention, that they had a band, and
They had two white guys in the band.
yeah,
Dr. Ingo, I don't know if you
Yeah.
heard Dr. Ingo, and his brother, they played with the Landless in the band.
and another question here about how the World War and the Korean conflict
Oh,
applied-
Thank you, Rudy, I forgot about that.
affected life in South Colton. Well, it had quite an impact on the people from South Colton, because it kind of opened up the door for the people from down there, from South Colton. In other words, the white community kind of relented a little bit and let us, it broke down some barriers. In other words, after that, after the war, when the fellows came back from the war, they opened up the swimming pool for us, and they did away with that we had to segregated sections in the theaters. We could sit any place we wanted to. So those were, and then the jobs opened up. Before there was delivery drivers, like the bread people that used to come to South Colton to distribute the bread. It was all white. The postal carriers, the postmen, all white. Well, a lot of those jobs opened up, and the housing opened up for us, and the public places. Maybe ice cream parlor opened up for us. So that's the way that the World War and the Korean, after it was over, that's the way it
So,
affected a lot of people.
A big impact there.
It was.
That made a lot of changes in the community.
Okay, that was the only thing that I wanted to
I
add
want to
to
say
it.
something. When I worked for the PFE, it was a nice shop, and everything was all but whites and Mexicans worked together. They're real nice and everything, And when that place closed down, and there were some journeymen, people that worked for the PFE, we went over to Santa Fe and got hired over there. I got hired as a regular laborer, just cleaning up and doing this and that. My brother Sal was a journeyman, Carmen, plus other guys that came over there. And we couldn't believe how we saw in the Santa Fe. When we walked in there, we started seeing the restrooms. It says for white men only.
What year was this?
58.
58?
In 58. We walked in there and then we all noticed that the restroom said white men only. And they were where they had to go to the other ones. So the guys from the PFP, they went over, they didn't care, they just started going in. They disregarded the signs. And at the same time, the Santa Fe would not let Mexicans or blacks go any higher than a helper. They wouldn't let them be journeyman, carmen or welders or whatever, Santa Fe had an apprenticeship school for locomotive, for machinists, welders and electricians, whatever trade there was, sheet metal workers, whatever, but they would not let Mexicans or black into the apprenticeship schools. Until after, and then I asked the guys that worked there that I knew, and I asked them, hey, what the heck is going on here? Have Santa Fe always been this way? Yeah, they've always been this way. But after World War II, they started, more or less opening up a little bit.
Yeah.
And they started opening the apprenticeship schools too. Because I finally went in there and I got an apprenticeship school as a carman. And then I graduated, from the apprenticeship school. And that's where I started getting many jobs. But that's what Santa Fe was.
So tremendous changes after World War II in Korea, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have a couple of committee members in the audience. Mr. Henry Vazquez is part of this committee also, and Mr. Frank Acosta is part of the committee. Do you have any questions of our guests?
Something just occurred to me, maybe if they would comment about the ability to speak Spanish at school at any time period.
Could you speak Spanish?
No, we couldn't speak Spanish. It was prohibited. We couldn't speak Spanish at all.
What would happen if they caught you speaking Spanish?
I don't recall ever having punished for it or caught speaking Spanish. But at the time that was when we were going to elementary school. At the time, we didn't really speak English. It was mostly Spanish. So I know it was prohibited, but I don't recall ever having to being punished or scolded for speaking Spanish.
Bobby,
Do you remember
What?
about being able to speak Spanish in school? Do you remember that we couldn't speak Spanish? Do you recall?
In Garfield or Wilson?
Yeah, Garfield or Wilson.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We spoke Spanish, out of the classrooms, but in the classrooms, mostly English. And most of the teachers at Wilson were all white. And they've been teaching there for many years on.
Yeah.
Years, and I was wondering how come they never left to other schools. I guess they just enjoy teaching Mexican kids, how to teach them. I know when my English teacher was Mrs. French, and that lady was very strict. She really taught us everything to speak English and all that, and all those teachers are good.
Mhm.
And then when we entered high school, we spoke English pretty good. Very
Yeah,
good.
because in one of your books, you mentioned that none of your teachers, even though they were white, ever transferred to new schools that were opening up.
Mhm.
They all stayed at Wilson or Garfield
Yeah.
Elementary. Yeah. I also have my nephew here, Paul. Do you have any questions for our guest this morning? None? Frank? Tampoco? Well, listen.
Let me say just one more thing about these 3 books that we
Oh,
published.
Please.
Really, we have to give credit to Dr. Rodolfo Serrano.
Mhm.
He was the one that was behind the project. His main reason for doing this is because he wanted to let his kids know where he came from. Because when the kids were born, they were raised someplace else. But he did this so his kids would know where he had come from and what he had gone through and why he became what he became. And so I just wanted to mention that to give Rudy Serrano credit for the one that was behind these 3 books.
And I had that question in there, but I forgot it. I'm glad you remembered it, saw it, Rudy.
Uh-huh.
But besides that, he got you motivated
He did.
to participate in this project.
He did.
And what motivated you to participate in the project?
We thought it was a good idea.
Uh-huh.
It was a good idea, and so it was Bobby, Frank Sanchez, Joe Lucero, Dr. Serrano, and myself.
Very good.
We got together and did the best we could.
How long did the project take you?
It took I would say about 2 years. Especially the last one, collecting all those pictures.
Uh-huh.
It was quite a project.
Well, you certainly have to be congratulated because those 3 books are what motivated me to start working on the oral history of South Colton. So thank you very much for being with us this morning. Truly appreciate all your participation and all your help with the project. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.